Peace and love. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZaAli. Today is Monday, January 25th, 2021. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. It is the morning after. I just did Science as a Weapon Part 4 live on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to the live. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to the full Science as a Weapon series. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go to my website, ZaZaAli.com, and it's on the main page. If you just click the the link, it'll take you right to it. Thank you to everyone who has purchased the Scientific Intervention in Our Affairs, as well as all of my books, all of my content as of late. Those of you who have sent Cash App love, those of you guys who have continuously supported me, supported my writing, and supported my work. I really, truly appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. And even, just for you to tune in and to, take in my perspectives and the information that I present. It really does mean a lot to me because I, respect the process of tuning into other people's videos and learning and taking in their energy and taking in their, their consciousness and awareness. So for people to do that to me and with me and for me, it really does mean a lot. And I want to make sure that I never take that for granted and that I always, acknowledge. I don't do, entertainment. I don't do, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying like the fact that people tune into me for, righteous conversation, and things that are not necessarily, entertaining or fun, just tuning in to get a different perspective or to, learn. That means a lot to me. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate each and every one of you. I do. I started kind of briefly talking about this conversation in the live yesterday. And so I just wanted to put up another video to just give a little bit more context. I've actually done a few videos about this subject as of late, in promotion of the Keys to Womanhood workbook, and also just because that's kind of where, my focus has been for the last, 6 to 8 months as I've been putting this book together. And so now, that it's complete and I'm looking at the culture and I'm looking at what's happening in the world and I'm kind of, assessing everything that's happening, where we are as women, where we are as Black women, where we are as a culture, Black people in general, in America and around the world, and where American culture is and how we are affecting and impacting the world. I know you guys have heard me talk about the age of Aquarius, me as well as other people, and this, paradigm shift that we're in right now. This is the stage, this transition that we're in right now, where women are supposed to be rising up and women are supposed to be leading. And when I say leading, I'm not talking about leading men. I'm not talking about ruling over men. I'm talking about, taking all of the, the data and the information from our experiences that we've been through the sojourn, of slavery, even prior to slavery, obviously. There were many great women who blazed a trail for us, a lot of them known, most of them unknown. When we talk about the queens in Kemet, in Africa, the Kandakis, all of the powerful women who have, kind of blazed the trail for us, even the women on slave ships who threw babies off to avoid their children be put into slavery. Like, this is the legacy, that we come from, particularly as women of African descent, Black women, indigenous women, whatever you feel most comfortable identifying yourself with. So for us to kind of, and me as a student of history, to see, the trajectory of what we've been through, and that includes, the abuse, the betrayal of our men, allowing us to be taken captive, and all of the things that we've been through over the course of the past 2,000 years specifically. For us to get to this moment in time right now where the entire world is crying out for guidance. The entire world is crying out for feminine leadership, whether they know it or not. The entire world is crying out for something different and something refreshing and something new. And obviously, I think the powers that be, when it comes to Kamala Harris, for instance, they understand that, right? And that's taking nothing away from Kamala Harris's accomplishments, as a sister, and what she's done and where she is right now. Like, I don't want to, minimize that, and a whole different conversation gets started where, people think I'm attacking women or I'm not giving women their right due. They're just due. No, if you even have that if you even take that from this video, you're clearly not somebody who's, who follows me or who has watched me over the years, because I am 1000% a proponent for, women's rights, women's wellness, and the self-rulership of women. I just am balanced, you know what I mean? And just because, I know how powerful and how wonderful and how great we are and have the potential to be, it doesn't mean that negates us being able to be self-aware, us being able to self-analyze, where we're falling short of the expectations of the Creator, as well as the legacies of those powerful women that have, preceded us. But when we talk about the age of Aquarius and this paradigm shift now, we are moving into a space where the roles of the gender, as well as the concepts of masculine and feminine energy and divinity, are being balanced out. We've been living in a very imbalanced society where, patriarchy, for lack of a better word, I don't really use that word, but it gives us all a kind of a focal point, where patriarchy and white male rulership, and black male rulership to an extent, has kind of handcuffed women. And just to give you an example from personal experience, like me being an academic and a scholar, from my own perspective, and a scientist, and doing what I do and being who I am, I can tell you for sure that in the small circle that I've been in, in the conscious community, outside of the conscious community, there is definitely a, underwritten bros before hoes kind of frequency in that world. And it's not just that world, it's in every aspect of society, right? So when I say bros before hoes, if you are, if you know slang or urban term, it doesn't mean that I'm calling women hoes. It's just it's just what's the word I'm looking for? It's a slang topic, right? Just to say that, part of our culture, and this comes from hip hop and street language, is, men, kind of creating this camaraderie and putting that camaraderie and that love, that brotherhood, so to speak, above women, which in itself makes absolutely no sense. But I get it. I understand where that comes from. And women, to a certain extent, have that same kind of, we're going to put ourselves first and, kind of put men on the back burner. It's the same thing, so part of it is slang. But when it comes to, Black culture in particular, there is absolutely a bros before hoes kind of sentiment. And so just from my personal experience, yes, I have 100% experience that, brothers that I had at one point in time, if you've been watching me, since 10 years ago when I was doing radio, 7 years ago, having different quote unquote confrontations with, certain males online, and when I was just speaking my piece or giving my perspectives, to, the validity or the merit of my intentions getting lost in the sauce, just because I'm going up against popular males, you know what I mean? And now all of a sudden, instead of me being able to have a meeting of the mind with these dudes, now all of a sudden I'm having to deal with their followers, and I'm being attacked by their followers. And no men in that arena ever publicly stepped up. My peers, people that have my phone number, that would call me or send me text messages of support, but would never publicly step forward and address the situation, even if it's just from a, hey, we're men, we're supposed to handle women in a different, way, in a different perspective. It never happened. And it's all good. I'm not saying that, to complain about it, because, all things work for the greater good, right? But I'm just talking about this sentiment and this element of our culture where we really do not, respect and protect Black women, particularly, because I'm going to talk about this culture now of Black women that are kind of disrespecting themselves, which obviously is going to lead to being disrespected. But I just want to be clear, like, there has to be a real serious cultural overhaul for the way that we're governing ourselves, because whether we move forward or not, whether we as women evolve and grow and change or not, things are changing. The spiritual paradigm shift is happening, and the age of Aquarius is upon us. So whereas before we were operating from this linear-minded, capitalistic, everybody for themselves kind of perspective, which obviously, started as a European concept and has absolutely merged into, our way of thinking and living and being, we're moving into a space now where it's going to have to be about the collective consciousness, us as individuals being aware and owning our responsibility to the collective consciousness, as well as, women kind of stepping back and reassessing and reanalyzing the way that we have been shaped and molded in the image of men. A lot of the overtly sexual, energy and the frequency right now that we're seeing in our culture and from women was absolutely predicated by men. And that's the thing that's so baffling to me. It's like, women now are weaponizing sexuality, right? And in a from the guise of sexual liberation. But how can you use the same tools that were imposed and projected upon you to now gain back your freedom? It doesn't even make sense. And I've been saying this for a long time, and I've gotten a lot of heat over this over the years, people making mockery of me, or, just making it seem as if I'm some sort of, feminist, lesbian, or asexual. I've even been called that. Woman that doesn't have a connection to men, or that's not, a sexual woman, or a feminine woman, which is absurd. Just because I don't talk about my personal life online, which it's none of your business. But just because I don't talk about my personal life or my personal experiences doesn't mean that I don't have them. You guys have gotten way too used to people giving you and showing you everything, to the point where when someone doesn't give you and show you everything, that you think something is wrong with them. I hold being a woman very sacred. I hold my sexuality and my relationships and my personal relationships very sacred. So anything that's sacred to me, I'm not going to share with the world, particularly when we live in a world of 85% of the people being deaf, dumb, and blind, 10% of the people being bloodsuckers of the poor, and 5% being the poor righteous teachers. So if I'm putting my personal information out into the world, I am allowing for scrutiny, and just a lot of unnecessary attention. And besides, I've never been that type of person. I'm very private. You know what I mean? I come on here. I consider this like a job. It's a part of my business. It's a part of my divine mission and purpose in this lifetime. So I do it. But I am also very keen on keeping the things that I want to keep to myself, and that is my right. With that being said, speaking of rights, I don't really like to talk about this, and I've strayed away from this. And you guys have heard me say this before, because the more spiritually aware and the more spiritually focused you become, you realize that people have the right to live and to do as they please. Everybody comes here, I won't say with a predetermined mission, but their soul has a certain experience that is, kind of the mission, the goal, the purpose. It can play out in a number of different ways, and you can decide to, kind of lean into your divine purpose, or you can go in a completely different direction. We all have free will. Women have the right to do as they please. Women have the right to represent themselves as they please. I'm not in any way a dictator. I don't believe in governing people or ruling over people. So that's why it's odd for me to talk about this sometimes, because when it all boils down to it, you can do as you please and be who you want to be. The thing that makes me very cautious and mindful is that I was a 14 and a 15 and a 16-year-old young, physically attractive young girl growing up in the hood in Oakland and experiencing a lot of situations that were very uncomfortable for me at that time, with men, with older men. We used to have men coming, when I went to Castlemont High School. I went to St. Elizabeth Elementary School. I went to Tennyson High School in Hayward, California. And it was not uncommon for grown men to be frequenting our, school at lunchtime, after school and whatnot, looking for girls to pick up, not necessarily on some prostitution type tip, but if you grew up in the hood, this is a part of the culture. Older men seek out younger women or just fine women, pretty women in general. But I learned at a very young age that I did not like that low frequency, low vibrational, male attention. There's a conversation happening now about colorism, and the sister Bria from Houston. She was a rapper. I forget what show it was on. It was on Netflix. It was one of those rap competition shows. I think it was T.I. and Cardi B, and if I'm remembering the show correctly, because it came out like a year or two ago. So now they're saying that she was selected over the other sister who was dark-skinned because she was light-skinned, and is talking about colorism. And while there may be some truth to that, I watched that show at the time, and I remember clearly thinking that the only reason that Bria won was because she was selling sex. And she was selling major sex, not just in her performances, but in her interactions with the other men that were on the panel. Actually, Rick Ross, I think, was a part of it. I might be thinking about the wrong show. You guys will know. You guys that have watched it and are familiar with this story will know. But I just remember thinking, oh, she's selling sex. So while there may have been some element of, her being light-skinned and being selected, I clearly remember her being, that stripper energy being real strong in her performances and real strong in her interactions with men. So while this is a conversation that's kind of being, focused as far as sexuality is concerned, as far as color is concerned, I think it was more so she was shaking more, showing more, and more, sexually explicit, if you will, in her lyrics and in her presentation. Now, that's just what I remember, and that's how I feel about that. It doesn't mean that her being light-skinned didn't play a role in it, but if she was like a light-skinned sister like Ciroc that was rapping about consciousness and positivity and, dropping jewels, would it have been the same thing? Probably not. So I think sometimes, we kind of blur the lines when we're having these conversations. In my second book, Plagues of Dysfunction, I talked about this particular subject, colorism, and how, it's one thing as a light-skinned woman, as a light-skinned young woman, to have men show me attention. But we need to be clear. A man's energy and projection that's coming from a lustful sexual energy versus a man's energy that's coming from a respectful, I want to get to know you. I value you. I appreciate your mind. I appreciate how you see the world. I appreciate how you move in the world. Those are two totally different things. And I think as women, we are losing sight of that. Right? So as a young woman, I learned very early that low vibrational, lustful, negative sex-based energy was not something that I wanted. So out of that experience has, kind of shaped and morphed the woman that I have come to be. I've never been a prude. You know what I mean? I've had my, my young years where I dressed a little bit more sexy, never, showing too much, but, little curves here, things like that. And then as I got older, you know what I mean? Like my style and the way that I represented myself has changed. I still like to do sexy, classy type of look, but I'm just not in the business of performing for men, performing for attention. You know what I'm saying? And because I knew at a young age the way you carry yourself, not just how I carried myself, but the way I saw other women carrying themselves, and the way I saw men, my nephews, my cousins, the men that I grew up with, the young dudes that I grew up with, my friends, my homeboys, the way that I heard them talk about women, those women who carried themselves that way. You know what I mean? I always knew I was not going to be in that conversation. There was never going to be a group of dudes in a locker room high-fiving each other and slapping hands and talking about how they all ran through me. No, it was never going to happen, and it never has happened, right? And I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying as if I'm validating or giving a free pass to, the bullshit that comes with, our culture and how men project on women or how men handle women. Or no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just giving you my experience, and I'm telling you how I see things and what I know as a woman who was a young, attractive female, navigating the hood, and then a young woman, navigating the corporate world, having to deal with white men and men of other races that were, that, and how they handled me, how they talked to me, how they treated me, their expectations without even knowing me. And then a full, mature, self-introspective woman who, has seen some things and experienced some things, and now is looking at a culture where I know from a spiritual perspective is waiting on women, is seeking guidance from women, is trying to find a way, whether consciously or subconsciously, to get out of this shit that we're in. And the shit that we're in has been cultivated by men. And not all men, not even most men, but men. And most men have acclimated to this system and to the society that we live in, to whereas now they think that promoting women who are operating from that sex-based frequency, they think that that's supporting women's rights. It's for you to put a sexually inclined, potential superstar who talks about, does songs talking about deep throating and giving a man oral sex, or wanting a man to please you sexually, or buy me a purse and I'll do this sexual act for you. I mean, like, our music now, our culture now is full-fledged promoting prostitution. And so we have men in hip hop and even in the conscious community that are promoting this shit by way of promoting women. So the female delegation of righteous women has come together and has asked me to step forward and to let those women know and those men know that we're tired of this shit. It's corny. It's played out. Every day I go on Instagram, I see another woman bending over, showing the crack of her ass, giving the world a view, a vantage point of the things about her that are supposed to be sacred, the things about her that could potentially, empower her, or, just the things that make women beautiful now are no longer sacred, and you're showing and giving it to the whole entire world. This delegation is not, full of nuns and African dashikis, who are plain, basic, boring, judgmental women sitting high up on a hill somewhere, trying to tell you how to live your life. No, we are classy, fly, successful, intelligent, righteous, sexy, respectful, wise, powerful, And that doesn't mean that you're a corporate woman or a business woman. Some of us are housewives. Some of us are, domestic women that take care of the household. Some of us are scientists, mathematicians, and engineers. Some of us are truth tellers and have social media platforms. Some of us are laying in the back in the cut, just handling our business and raising our children or doing what we have to do. But I can assure you that there is a growing number of women and a culture of women that is irritated and tired of this shit. There is also a growing number of men. And I'm not talking about square dudes who are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, who don't have any power or any success. No, I know a lot of men directly and indirectly who write me or who I have conversations with, attractive, intelligent, powerful in their own right, successful educators or students that are scratching their heads and trying to understand, how am I supposed to respect women? How am I supposed to teach my son to respect women when women continue to disrespect themselves? Now, how do you differentiate whether a woman is disrespecting herself or if a woman is just, expressing herself sexually? Well, look at the comments. Look at the energy that it creates. Look at the impact that it has on the global consciousness, on the local consciousness, on the national consciousness, on the collective, the cultural consciousness as Black people. Our culture sets the tone for the world, particularly Black people in America. So if our culture sets the tone for global culture and for Black culture and for hip hop culture, then what are Black women right now teaching the world? How are we affecting the collective consciousness in a time where women are supposed to be raising up, not just sexual freedom and sexual liberation, but mental freedom and mental liberation, emotional freedom and emotional liberation, spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation? I have a problem with women owning their bodies and being sexually liberated or sexually free, but goddamn, can you balance that shit out? It's like I talked about in the Science of Sex workbook. Any kingdom or any culture that is a great culture has to have a balance of indulgence and discipline. This is why the Moors fell, because they were too indulgent. They lost track of the discipline. And every time they lost sight of the discipline, being up there in Europe and playing around with all those women and, yes, they were building and doing great things, but they were also getting bored. So then the kings of Africa had to come back up and re-civilize them and kind of balance things out again. And then they would leave and go back to Nubia and go back to Kemet. And then all of a sudden, one dynasty passes and a new dynasty comes in, and now the fuckery comes in again, right? So that's how we have to be, that's called being balanced when we look at history and not just saying, yes, the Moors in Spain were great. Yeah, they were great, but they were on some bullshit too at certain periods in time, right? Africa was too. You have to stop, romanticizing the history and talk about what really happened so we can figure out how we got to where we are. So the balance of indulgence and the balance of discipline, which we are completely 100% lacking. So you have to ask yourself, right? I've been talking about this scientific war. I've been talking about the psychological aspect of it, right? The emotional aspect, the spiritual war, etc. Here we are now, morphing into this age of Aquarius, this paradigm shift that's happening. There's absolutely a full-fledged war on humanity taking place right now. What's happening simultaneously with women, particularly Black women? We are seeing this, I talked about the avatar, the African goddess on American Gods, and how that avatar is reflective of what's happening in the culture right now. All of our cultural icons, all of our cultural avatars are representing that same sexually based, low vibrational frequency based sexual energy. There is a high vibrational, sexually based frequency, sexually based energy. You're not going to see that level of consciousness or understanding online, because those women and those who have that level of understanding approach sexuality from a sacred perspective. And anything that's sacred, you're not going to thrust it out into the world of the 85-10-5, because once it goes once it goes out into the World Wide Web, now it's out into the ethers, and now there's not a lot of control on how that information is being put out into the world and how it's received, right? So there is a level of sacredness, a level of respect that comes with that high vibrational sexual understanding that is not meant for the world. Just like when you're focused on healing, just like when you're focused on being your highest and best self, you usually do that in private. You usually do that, close the door, turn within, and become introspective, right? Because those are the keys to governing yourself and the keys to self-mastery. So when you look at the male energy and how it's projected on a lot of these women, the Cardi B's, the Nicki Minaj's, the mulattoes, all of these, these women that fall under this same sexual avatar that talk about the same things. What's the rap group's name? Young Miami, City Girls, I think it is, whatever, you know who I'm talking about. And a lot of these other females who have, platforms online that may not be, they may be singers or they may not be, they all kind of, it's like this cookie cutter, almost as if they fall off an assembly line, right? I saw a video, Rihanna promoting Fenty, and I love Rihanna. I have so much respect for, what she does in Barbados, what she does as a businesswoman. But I saw the video yesterday and it's like, sis, is it really necessary at this point for you to still be bending over and shaking your ass in front of a computer, in front of a camera? Okay, if you're on stage performing, that's one thing. As an entertainer and as an artist, I get it. But when you're selling, your products and whatnot, I don't know. I just, again, she has the right to do as she pleases, but in the broader context of the culture, our young daughters are looking up at this, and they admire Rihanna, they respect Beyonce, right? These are the cultural icons that we have in front of us, and women are an ecosystem. So, whereas you have your mother, you have your grandmother, and the women in your family, you also now have access to seeing these beautiful, powerful women all the time, who the men are clamoring for, the women are clamoring for, the whole world is kind of salivating, right? Why are they salivating? Because they're selling sex. You know what I mean? So I just really wish that even if they didn't necessarily put it into their art forms, I really wish that, some of these women would be a little bit more vocal about young women and women in general and how we carry ourselves, and when we emit a certain frequency, that it's going to attract a certain type of frequency to us. The video that the sister that I spoke about briefly, Chloe from the group, Chloe Haley, I think their name is. I'm sorry, I haven't said their name yet, right? Because I'm not really that familiar with them. I know these two beautiful sisters who came up under Beyonce, who blew up, who had very powerful voices. I looked at them as kind of like Disney kids. I thought they were, doing work on Disney, but I'm looking at this one sister who is now trending everywhere. She has a little girl's face. The busted challenge, you start off, with your regular self, no makeup on, just looking like you normally look, like you wake up looking, and then all of a sudden you get glammed up and you turn into a stripper. I'm looking at this little sister, and I think she's a young woman, maybe in her late teens or early 20s, but she looks like a little girl. In the face, she looks like a little girl. So I'm seeing this little girl or a young woman go from looking like, regular average sister to now full throttle stripper. And I'm aware that there is a whole culture of young women that kind of look up to her and that identify with her as beautiful, as melanated, girl power type, situation. And I'm looking at the responses from women in the culture, and everybody's bigging this up, and everybody's, kind of salivating, not powerful, enlightened energy coming from this low frequency, low vibrational, lustful energy, right? So now what she doesn't understand is that when she goes and sits down for casting calls, or when she goes to interview for movies, or when she potentially wants to be a part of a song or some sort of production that involves men, right? When she goes and sits down with these dudes, old white dudes, perverts, young black rappers, right? Older black men, etc., she's going to have to ward off that sexual energy. She's going to have to fight to be respected, to have her mind respected, and for them to listen to her, you know what I mean, and accept her, as a young woman, kind of growing and learning in the industry. She's just opened the door for a shitload of low vibrational, lustful energy that I know for a fact she doesn't want, because who does? It's fun and games when it's online. When the shade room is reposting it and all of the famous women are high-fiving you and telling you, yes, this is a good look. Yes, you look good. You look fly. That's one thing. But when you have to go back into the real world and actually engage undisciplined, disrespectful, lustful men that are trying to get in your pants, and now this could potentially be a situation where you either let him in your pants or you don't let him in your pants. It's getting in the way of your actual talent, your actual skill set. Why won't these women talk about that? Why won't the women who are, popular in these, that are high-fiving this shit, talk about the other aspect? Cardi B running around waving her stripper flag. Why won't you tell young women and women what the reality, the other side of that world and that life is about? So I think this is, a great teaching lesson for young women. If you're watching me, be mindful. It might be cute when you put it on social media, but when you have to sit down and actually interview for a job, or when you have to sit down and, interact with men who, may have seen the sacred parts of you that you have now shown to the world, you have to be ready for the fact that this man may not care about how beautiful your voice is. He may not care about your portfolio. He may not care about all the hard work that you put into getting to where you are. He may not care about your family legacy and the things that you've been through. The only thing he's trying to do is get in between those legs that you've actually shown the world. This is the reality. And it pisses me off that there aren't more women, particularly in the industry, that are coming forward and that are kind of telling young women and women in general these things to keep them from having to go through the things and the experiences that they've gone through. And I've been a woman who has been very careful and mindful about how I carry myself, how I dress, not necessarily because I'm trying to, overcompensate for men, but because I just want to, maintain a semblance of respect everywhere that I go. You know what I'm saying? I always knew. My father took me to a modeling casting call in San Francisco when I was 11 years old. Everybody had told me, you should be a model, you're tall, you got the look for it. And I went on a casting call with my father to a modeling agency at 11 years old, and they had me walk the runway. And there was only like 3 people, in the room. It wasn't, a public event or anything. But I just remember saying to myself, I don't want to be known for my looks. Right now, and I have absolutely see nothing wrong with models, beautiful women being able to, model in the fashion industry. I support all of that, right? But I knew at a young age, right, that there is a certain level of compromise that comes with being known for your looks, because people don't really value that on a substantive level. They value it when it comes to selling clothes, selling purses, selling shoes, selling products. But when it comes to the depth of who you are as a human being, right? It's like people always have this idea of, if you look a certain way, they judge you. So now you have to kind of go a little bit further to get people to respect you for your mind. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying any of this is right. I'm not saying any of it is the way that we should be handling each other. I'm telling you about the real world, realities of being a woman. So I wish that young sister well. I would prefer that she be trending for her beautiful voice or for her talent or her skill set. Unfortunately, I've never seen that. I've never seen her trend for that. I've seen people celebrate her voice. But as far as like the thrust of energy now that she's receiving, I think that in itself says a lot about our culture. I do. There is a female rapper. I'm not going to say her name. Actually, she's not. Well, is she a female? Yeah, she is a female. Someone sent me her video. Like, oh, she's dope. Listen to her. You know, she was talking about, something that didn't have anything to do with her sexuality, or it was her trying to, tell a deeper lesson, just as far as like stuff that we all deal with. So I went to her page and I was like, is this a female or a dude? She looks like a dude. And she's clearly, LGBTQ. So I started, she's very popular. I had never heard of her before, but I, started looking through her page and I started watching some of her videos. And she starts talking about, I guess she's getting a lot of flack from men because men think she wants to be a man, et cetera, et cetera. So as I'm looking through her videos, and again, I'm not going to say her name because, nowadays you can't have constructive, intelligent dialogue with other human beings. Now, you say a person's name and now all of a sudden you're getting attacked by their fans. Well, I don't want to deal with anybody's fans. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make a broader statement about the consciousness, the collective consciousness. It's not just about this particular individual. She just happens to be the one who said it. So I'm watching one of her videos and she starts talking about, and mind you, I'm assuming she's the masculine part of the relationship. She's the masculine energy in her relationship with her girlfriend, which no judgment, live and let live, do as you please. So she starts talking about masculine and feminine energy, and that it's not about gender, and that, you lowerlings who don't really understand masculine and feminine energy, you're so stuck on this male female thing that you don't realize that, there's so much power in my womb, there's power in my breasts, right? And granted, there is, as a woman, right, she is powerful naturally, regardless of her sexual orientation. But it kind of ruffles my feathers a little bit when I see, women, and this is something that I have seen more than once, who take these spiritual laws and these spiritual guidelines, one being, mental gender, for instance. The masculine and feminine perspective is not just, the male-female dichotomy. It expresses itself in different ways. It's in nature. The sun has a masculine-feminine dichotomy. Birds have a masculine-feminine dichotomy. The grass, the trees, right? All elements of what we know to be the physical reality have a masculine and feminine dichotomy. Even when you break down an atom down to, protons, neutrons, etc. There's the masculine, feminine element everywhere. So that's what she was referring to, and there is truth in that. But let's be clear, the highest reflection in the physical realm of the masculine-feminine dichotomy is expressed by man and woman, right? So while your physical womb, and remember that women have two wombs, but your physical womb does represent the feminine dichotomy, it can only be activated by a man. And that's whether you have a man to, produce semen so that you and your wife or your girlfriend can produce a child, whether, whatever the different things that science is introducing now for women who don't have men in their life to be able to be impregnated. Let's be clear, semen comes from men. It takes a man to activate the physical aspect of a woman's womb to bring a child into the world. And as a woman, the minute that you produce a male child, you have a different level of responsibility and accountability to the male species. I say that as a mother of a 17-year-old boy. I have a different level of accountability and responsibility to men because I have a son, and because I am raising my son to become the type of righteous men that we talk about in our communities and in our culture that we rarely see, but that we know exist, right? So, no, sis, I'm sorry, but I rebuke this language in the name of Imhotep and Pharaoh Hatshepsut and no. You know, the male-female dichotomy now, because we are kind of, we're evolving, things are changing, you know, and obviously people have the right to express themselves and to live as they please. But the spiritual laws and the laws that are governing us all do not change. So let's stop this, you know, indirect and subconscious and maybe unconscious goal of trying to move men out of the equation, you know, because of this free fall of, you know, love and sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's some certain basic things that are at play that will always be at play. It will always take a man and a woman to create life. Now, whether that child is created in a test tube or created through, you know, a sexual connection between a woman and a man, or, you know, however it plays itself out, let's be clear, the laws have been ordained. You know what I'm saying? So you personally having issues with men who feel some type of way because you are a very masculine female, I understand that. But let's be clear, you're a woman who is under the guise of the divine feminine energy, which is why you came into this physical being in this physical world as a woman, because you are a progenitor of the divine feminine consciousness, awareness, and energy. For whatever has happened in your life, or whatever your life trajectory, or whatever your, you know, aspirations are in your life, personal life, which I have no judgment against, you have leaned more towards the masculine aspect of yourself. Doesn't mean it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's what's happening. You have a certain aspect of you when it comes to how you express yourself physically. You have leaned more towards the masculine aspect of yourself. We see men who lean more towards the feminine aspect of themselves, right? Now, taking sexual, you know, how you identify sexually, with your, you know, sexual orientation, taking that off the table, let's just deal with the math and the basic information that we know we can validate. Sexual energy has a female, or not sexual energy, how we represent ourselves as men and women. We have a masculine energy and we have a feminine energy. Women who, you know, black women in particular, let's say, who survived the, you know, the slavery Holocaust, right? For a woman to survive being raped, whether she was a house slave or a field slave, continuously being raped, continuously having her children sold off on auction blocks, right? Had to be more masculine in her self-representation. Not that she was walking around looking hard, but she had to tune more into the masculine aspects of her personality and her consciousness and awareness to be able to survive that, right? The women who are raising sons and daughters in war zones, in the hood, have to be more in tune with and expressive in their masculine energy in order to survive that. The sister in Brooklyn, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, who was attacked by men, you understand what I'm saying? Women who are navigating those types of situations all the time have to be more masculine in their awareness to be able to deal with those situations. Men who are single parent fathers, men who are taking care of their mothers, men who are working in environments where they deal with a lot of women have to be more in tune with their feminine selves. All of those things are valid and relative, but let's like, we can't try to change the laws of the universe and the spiritual laws to fit our personal way of life, to fit our personal goals and aspiration. These laws do not change, and it's not a judgment. It doesn't mean you're right if you live a certain type of way or you're wrong if you live a certain type of way. No, live and let live. But we are not going to continue this free fall Like none of what you do personally matters, especially when you have a following of 1 million people. No, now your accountability and responsibility grows. Now the information that you put out to the world, especially when you start talking about metaphysics and spirituality, there's a higher consequence and a price to pay when you start blurring the lines of the spiritual laws. So I just wanted to say that. And again, initially I was going to address this first. I was going to put the video up and then respond to it. But again, I don't want to be arguing with people's fans. And the laws don't change whether I'm talking to her or whether I'm talking to a random, brother or sister on the block, right? The situation in New York, right? I love the fact that the people there are, gathering and kind of protesting and holding those dudes accountable. I hope their asses get thrown in jail. And when they go to jail, that they, run into, Trey or Man. You know what I'm saying? Somebody that righteously respects women, or even just the legal system in itself. I believe they will be caught if they haven't already, and, justice will be done. Legal justice and divine justice, right? But I think as a culture, it's kind of hypocritical for us to, we clamor, on these one-off events, right? When they go viral and trending, and rightfully so. But our culture as a whole promotes that type of energy. Our music, the way men talk about our women, very anti-female kind of sentiment. The way that women get handled online, and in the broader context of our community, we greenlight and gaslight that type of shit all the time. Maybe not a group of 4 men beating up a woman, but, the gang rape culture, the owning and controlling women culture, the only promoting, women that are willing to appeal to your sexual whims part of the culture. Like, there's a lot of fuckery in the male-female dichotomy that plays itself out in the Black culture in particular every day that we don't talk about. So if we are really serious about getting a handle on the anti-female frequency, then all of those things have to be addressed. Excuse me. Also, when it comes to, this culture now, I was talking yesterday about how are men supposed to learn how to respect women when they can log online and see the crack of a woman's ass at any given moment. It's like, I want you to respect me. I want you to value me. I want you to appreciate me. But I also want you to like this picture of me, busting it open. It doesn't even make sense. And those women will see. All women will see. All young women will see. When you lead sexually, when you lead with that frequency and that energy, you're going to attract men that are leading with that frequency and that energy, which means that man probably has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more women that are leading with that frequency. So now you're having subconscious and unconscious threesomes with a bunch of low frequency sexually ruled beings. Just because you have a sex with a person like that, that's a transfer of energy. That's a download of data. Whether it's a jump off, whether it's a one-night stand, or whether it's a long-term relationship, you are downloading energy, you are downloading consciousness, not only of the person that you're having sex with, but the other people that they're having sex with at the same time, right? Again, indulgence and discipline. And if we are going to have a sexual liberation for women, which I think we're in the middle of, is it liberation or is it just, whatever you want to call it? There has to be a simultaneous balance in here's why you should be celibate. Here's why you shouldn't have sex if you just came out of a relationship until you kind of get clarity on your emotional and spiritual well-being. Here's why it's dangerous to be promiscuous and have multiple sexual partners at one time for men and women. Because it's not just an exchange of semen and an exchange of bodily fluids. You are downloading consciousness, you are downloading energy, you are downloading frequency. So I'm saying that in the broader context of what happened to this sister in Brooklyn, indirectly, we have a culture of women that are objectifying themselves and disrespecting themselves, and it's having ripple effects in the broader culture. So that's the aspect that women need to focus on and work on. And then as far as men are concerned, the black woman is God, the black woman is queen, you know, the social media movement where you say you love and value and protect and appreciate black women online, that needs to translate into the streets. And by the way, if you really do respect and appreciate black women, then you need to start holding these on internet, you know, kingpins accountable for the way that they talk about and handle and treat black women, all black women, not just the ones that you support or you value. The conscious female whole frequency is alive and kicking. And I saw one video. Again, I'm not going to put this person on blast. I'm not going to say her name. I'm not going to say the people that are promoting her, because this is not specific to one person. This is a frequency, a level of consciousness now. With a woman who is surrounded by women that are on the ground shaking their asses and twerking in the name of goddess consciousness. Stop it. If you are really representing goddess frequency, then you are surrounded by goddesses, not concubines. If you are really representing divine goddess consciousness and energy and frequency, then you are surrounded by, and you are promoting, and you are loving, and you are supporting women that emulate and that live the divine goddess consciousness and frequency, not concubines. You can't be the only goddess surrounded by concubines. It's not how it works. Or are you indirectly appealing to what society is interested in, or indirectly appealing to what men want to see, which means that you are not in fact a goddess. You could be a queen in the making, but you have not yet come to the mindset of a queen, because a queen operates for the whole. A queen doesn't just operate on her own personal merit. She understands that how she moves, how she walks, how she talks, how she acts, how she thinks, what she writes, what she posts, what she gives to the world is not just about her. It's about the whole. Now, if you don't want to be responsible or accountable to the whole, then don't call yourself a queen. Just stand on your square as a individual sovereign woman, and I respect that. But when you start talking queen language and goddess language, but you are exhibiting whole frequency, whole energy, concubine frequency, concubine energy, then I need to step in and say something respectfully. And that goes for the men or the males that are promoting this shit in the name of consciousness. A sister asked me yesterday, was I going to do women's only classes? And, you know, the fact that she asked me, it kind of brought back up, you know what I mean? It pricked my consciousness of something that I've been intending to do, and something that was the intention that started with the workbook. Yes, I am. I'm in the process of relocating to LA. I suspect that March is my goal, to actually be in LA, to have my place, and to, you know, kind of be settled down. Once I'm there, everything lines up. Yes, I am going to be doing those classes, as well as some other, you know, workshops and private classes. I'm not going to be doing a lot of online content, a lot of YouTube videos. That's why I've been putting out these longer presentations, so I can make my perspective on certain things clear, and my research and studies on certain things. But I'm not going to be online on YouTube, you know, doing these videos like this, because I've, you know, made a conscious decision that, you know, the way that I want my business to move and to navigate, and social media is only going to play a partial role in that. But just to her question, as well as to the broader context of what I'm saying, I accept my accountability, my responsibility as a goddess, right? Owning that what comes with that, as a queen, owning what comes with that, and making sure that I am doing my part. Human beings are an ecosystem, and women have an ecosystem unto ourselves. So if we're in the day and time right now where, you know, this age of Aquarius, this shift in consciousness, you know, now where we're supposed to be, you know, coming back to a balance where the masculine and feminine energy are expressed in a righteous and wholesome way, we should understand why in a time where women are supposed to rise, in a time where women are supposed to shine, in a time when women are supposed to lead, we should understand, if we are looking at this in the right way, why women are being guided towards this low frequency, lustful, sexually based energy. Whereas now we're supposed to be using this womb and our hearts and the mind and heart cohesion and that synchronicity. We're supposed to be using this to raise men up. We're supposed to be using it to raise women up. We're supposed to be using it to set a new trajectory and a new dichotomy for women and how we express ourselves and how we see ourselves. Then we should understand why women are now being trapped in this low vibrational frequency where they think that, sexuality is your power. It's a part of your power if it's done right. As with anything, everything you approach, if you approach it from your higher self, it can empower you. If you approach it from your lower self, it can empower you. So my question for the Cardi B's and the Nicki Minaj's and the Rihanna and Beyonce and all of these other women, and I say Rihanna and Beyonce tongue-in-cheek because I do value the good that they do for the culture. I do value seeing Beyonce as a wife and as a mother and seeing her growth and development. But it still applies to her. She's really one of the main progenitors that kind of kicked this off with that bootylicious kind of frequency and vibration, right? And even when I went to see her concert recently, I still was kind of like, you know what I'm saying? But again, she's an entertainer, and that's part of the reason why, if entertainers are only held accountable for their entertainment, that's one thing. When entertainers become, at the forefront where, they're avatars now, that's when, that's the only reason, to be honest, why I even need to speak on this. These are avatars. These are women that are establishing cultural norms for how girls and women behave, how they see themselves, and how they interact in the world, right? That being said, I don't want this to become a, just because I name dropped a couple of high profile celebrities that now, you go into attack mode because I attack your avatar. No, I'm speaking for young women coming up behind me. Let's just think about this in context. If this is, we're shifting into this paradigm shift where women are now supposed to be, at the forefront of global decisions, business decisions, world decisions, how we navigate as a society and as a whole, as humanity. And so, the 12 through 19-year-olds right now, girls who are in that age range, we are supposed to be setting up a culture and setting up, traditions and setting up infrastructure so that those 12 through 19-year-olds, when they pass 21 and they go into that 21 to 31 age range, we have armed them with enough information where they can go out into the world and be able to sustain themselves, to be able to demand and command respect, and to be able to do whatever it is that they want and not be limited to having to sexually express themselves to get ahead in the world. And this is the culture that we're looking at right now, where we are indirectly telling our daughters and the women that are among us that you have to use sex directly or indirectly to get ahead in the world. That's very dangerous, because while you may have bodyguards and, you know what I'm saying, you live a very inculcated life. You live in a bubble, so to speak, where the average dude who walks into a liquor store when you go to buy a bottle of wine, these savages don't have access to you. But women in the world are still dealing with this shit. So you are protected, you are guided, not only by your security and your staff, but you got random people online protecting you, standing up for you, vouching for you, strangers that will die for you to defend you. But the average sister walking into a store in a full length North Face coat with boots on and trying to be warm and just trying to buy a bottle of wine and go back home and have to deal with the savagery in this culture that is being directly and indirectly affected by the way that women carry themselves, by the way that men handle women, by the way that rappers speak about women in their songs, right? That's the real shit. I'd like to hear these women talk about that. I'd like to hear these women. Actually, no, I don't. I'm going to say it. And for the women who are ascribing to self-respect, ascribing to respect in the world, ascribing to be able to sit down in a meeting with a man, white, black, or otherwise, and be accepted and interacting based on your merits, based on your education, based on your work ethic, right? Based on your genius, based on your heart, based on all the things that make you wonderful and great. You know what I mean? We want to have those interactions with men. I want to have those type of connections and relationships with men. And not to say that he won't be, looking at me in a business suit, you know what I mean, and still be undressing me with his eyes, but it'll be left up to his imagination. He won't be able to go to my Instagram page and see it, even if I don't show it to him. It's got to change. And I know that the momentum is moving so fast in that direction as far as this, sexuality and being known for, the size of your ass and the size of your breasts. Like, I get it. That's the momentum in that direction is heavy. So it's going to be hard, if not impossible, to change the trajectory. But I know what I know. I know that once truth enters the mind and once truth enters the spirit, there's really nothing you can do except self-avoidance, right? Now that you've heard me or another woman who's coming from that righteous intention, now that you've heard me say it, a jewel has been planted in your brain. Now you can actively deny it if you want to, but it's there. You don't end patriarchy with ass shaking. Twerking is not going to end patriarchy. It is only going to empower and embolden it. Shaking your ass is not going to end patriarchy. It's only going to empower and embolden it. I'm talking about publicly. I don't care what you do in your personal life. I don't care what you do. That's not my business. When you give it to the world, it's my business. Especially when it's affecting my 17-year-old goddaughter, my nieces, my 25-year-old niece, my 21-year-old niece, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of young girls that follow me and that watch my content. I'm more accountable to them and responsible to them than your favorite celebrity. ZaZaAli.com is my website. Keys to Womanhood, what every young lady and woman should know, is a full color workbook that I did specifically surrounding these topics. I talk about the energy centers, the chakras, learning how to balance and how to decipher balanced and imbalanced chakras and how that applies to your life. I talk about the male-female dichotomy, what we're talking about now, that data transfer of sexual energy when you take on a physical partner. I talk about the power of your mind, understanding the power of heart and mind synchronicity as a woman. I talk about, sexually transmitted diseases. I talk about the menstrual cycle, understanding when it starts, the whole process, what happens to your body, and different, methods for young girls to use to be able to, that conversation that all girls don't have with mothers or with daughters or with other women in their family or with men, being raised by a father. You don't know how to talk to your daughter about her menstrual cycle and what's happening and what she should buy and what she should use and how she should feel and her emotional changes. I talk about that in all of those things in the book. I talk about becoming a queen, right? And learning that it's a goal, right? You have to qualify. You have to qualify to become a queen. So learning how to take self-accountability and self-awareness, being mindful of your reputation, being mindful about how your energy and your thoughts and your behavior affects other people, right? The family dichotomy, this concept of a village. All girls don't have that. All women don't have that. So number one, this is what you should have, the family tree dichotomy. And if you don't have it, here's how we proceed in order to still become our highest and best selves, right? So I just, a full array of things that I wish I had known, that I wish another woman had told me, that I wish somebody in my family or a woman in the community had pulled me to the side and pulled my card, right? And helped me to get a righteous understanding of how I was moving and navigating in the world. I'm having this conversation with you as a young woman and as a woman in this workbook, Keys to Womanhood, what every young lady and woman Keys to Womanhood, what every young lady and woman should know. Just my particular perspectives on what I've been through and what I've experienced as a young woman and as a woman. It's available on my website. Those of you guys who have ordered it, I told you already, well, I told you in the previous video, I had some issues with some embedded fonts. I had to switch it up, change some things in the book so that it printed properly. Because of that, it kind of put my timeline back by a month. Normally, my printer only takes about 7 weeks to get it fixed. Because we're in the COVID era right now, they're operating at half staff and half capacity. So I'm, kind of navigating through that. So thank you guys so much for your patience. I can't wait for you to get this book and to see this book. I'm waiting for my actual, finalized copy to give them the green light to go to print. But I'm expecting that to happen this week. And once they ship it out to me, it'll go out to you guys. But thank you for, your patience and allowing me to get this done the right way so I can put it out into the world the right way. ZaZaAli.com is my website. I have other metaphysics workbooks as well as my Black Matter series. Thank you guys so much for your support, for your time, for your attention, and for your energy. Much love. Peace.